The alarm was already screaming when I reached the containment bay, and the sound coming from inside it was worse. I had been walking toward the crew lounge when the lights along the corridor flipped to amber, pulsing fast, and every door on the level sealed itself except the one in front of me. That door was wide open. Through it, I could see 3 Velkathi handlers pressed flat against the far wall, their massive armored bodies shaking, and in the middle of the room, a metal crate was rocking on its base, slamming against the floor with a force that dented the plating beneath it. I should have turned around. Every rule I had been trained on said turn around. Instead, I stepped inside. "Close that door behind him," one of the handlers shouted, and for a moment, I thought he meant to trap me in there with whatever was tearing the crate apart from the inside. Then the door hissed shut, and I understood he meant to keep it from getting out. "What is that?" I asked, though some part of me already knew. Everyone on this station had heard the rumors about a passenger, too important and too fragile to be named on any manifest. "A hatchling," the handler said, his voice tight with something I had never heard from a Velkathi before. "Fear, Drashkarian. Do not go near it." The crate lid buckled outward, and a sound came out of it that did not belong to anything small. It was a scream, high and raw, the kind that claws at your spine before your brain even understands it as sound. Then a wing, pale and half-formed, punched through the gap in the metal, and the whole crate tipped over. The thing that spilled out onto the floor was smaller than I expected. Maybe the size of a large dog, but wrong in every proportion, all sharp angles and trembling muscle, scales the color of morning frost, instead of the dark slate I had seen on adult Drashkarian in briefing photos. Its eyes were huge, gold, and locked onto every one of us at once, flicking from face to face, like it was trying to decide which direction death would come from first. "Get back," the handler said to me, but I was already moving, and not away. "Wait," I said. "Just wait. You do not understand. 4 cycles ago, it took the arm off a maintenance drone. It is not calm. It is not tame. It is a weapon that has not finished growing yet." The hatchling's head snapped toward the sound of his voice, and it let out another scream, backing itself into the corner of the room, wings spread as wide as the cramped space allowed, every muscle coiled like it expected the ceiling itself to attack. I understood, in that second, why the handlers were terrified. It was not because the creature was dangerous. It was because everyone in the room, including me, had walked in ready to fight something, and instead, we had found something that was fighting because it thought it had no other choice. "Turn off the lights," I said. "What?" "The bright ones. Leave the low ones on the floor. Do it now." The lead handler stared at me like I had lost my mind, but the ship's systems answered faster than argument could, and a moment later, the harsh white light dropped away, replaced by the dim amber strip running along the base of the walls. The hatchling's screaming did not stop, but the pitch of it changed, dropped half a note, like something in its chest had loosened by a fraction. "Everyone out into the corridor," I said. "Please, all of you. You would be alone with it. I know. It could kill you before the door finishes opening. I know that too." He looked at me for a long moment, and then, to my surprise, he stepped back. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the simple fact that nothing else had worked, and there was nothing left to lose by trying something strange. The 3 of them backed out through the door, and it slid shut behind them, leaving me alone in a room with a screaming, half-grown creature that could, by every account I had heard, end my life in seconds. I sat down on the floor, not near it. Not far from it either, just close enough that it could see me clearly, and far enough that it did not feel cornered by my presence. I crossed my legs, put my hands flat on my knees, and looked at the floor instead of at its eyes, because staring at a frightened animal is the fastest way to convince it that you are a threat. The screaming went on. My ears rang with it. Somewhere behind that door I could hear the low murmur of the handlers arguing, probably debating whether to override the lock and pull me out before I got myself killed. I stayed still, and I stayed quiet, and I let the seconds stretch into minutes. "I'm not going to hurt you," I said, keeping my voice as flat and boring as I could make it. "You don't know that yet. That's fine. I'm not leaving, and I'm not coming closer either. We can just stay like this." It did not understand a word of it, of course. But tone carries further than language ever does, and slowly, so slowly I almost missed it happening, the screaming thinned into something smaller, a ragged, exhausted whine. Its wings, which had been thrown out wide in warning, began to droop, trembling from the effort of holding that posture for so long. 10 minutes passed, then 20. My legs went numb against the cold floor, and still I did not move, because the one thing I understood, without anyone teaching me, was that the moment I moved first, I would lose whatever fragile thread was starting to form between us. The hatchling's breathing began to slow. Its wide gold eyes, which had been darting to every corner of the room, started to settle, returning again and again to me, like it was testing whether I would still be exactly where I had been the last time it looked. I held out my hand, not toward it, just out, palm up, resting on the floor in the space between us, an offering it could choose to ignore. My arm ached, almost immediately from holding the position, but I kept it there, steady, unmoving, and I waited. For a long time, nothing happened. The hatchling watched my hand, the way you might watch a trap you were certain was hiding something sharp. Its claws scraped once against the floor plating, a nervous, testing sound, and then stopped. Then, inch by inch, it began to move. It did not walk so much as slide, low to the ground, wings folded tight against its ribs, every step deliberate and slow, as if it were crossing a bridge it did not trust to hold its weight. Twice it stopped completely, gathering itself, gold eyes locked on mine, and twice I stayed exactly still and said nothing, letting it decide on its own that I was not going to lunge. By the time it reached my hand, it was close enough that I could feel the heat radiating off its small body, hear the fast, uneven rhythm of its breathing. It lowered its head, and for one heartbeat, I thought it might still choose to bite, to prove to itself that the danger it had been raised to expect was still there. Instead, it pressed its snout into my palm. I did not move. I barely breathed. The warmth of it spread up through my fingers, and slowly, the trembling running through its small frame began to ease, like a current finally finding somewhere safe to go. Behind the sealed door, I heard one of the handlers make a sound I had never heard from a Velkathi before, something choked and disbelieving, and then the door slid open just enough for him to look through. "In 400 cycles," he said quietly, "no one has touched him without armor between them." I did not answer right away. I was too busy watching the hatchling's eyes drift half shut, its breathing evening out, its whole body finally loosening after what must have been hours, maybe days, of pure fear. A low sound started in its narrow chest, a soft, steady rumble that the translator in my earpiece struggled to render, offering only an uncertain guess. Safe. The closest word it could find was safe. He was never dangerous, I said. He was just alone, and everyone who came near him came with fear in their hands. He could feel that. Creatures always can. The handler stepped fully into the room now, slow and careful, keeping his distance out of respect rather than fear. The assembly sent 3 of our best to guard him, and none of us could get within 5 steps. "You were guarding him like he was a bomb," I said. "I just sat with him like he was a person." He did not answer that. He did not need to. I stayed on that floor for a long while after that, long enough that my legs went from numb to aching to something close to nothing at all, and the hatchling slept curled against my side, like the past hours of terror had simply drained out of him the moment he found one still point in a room full of movement and noise. I am not a soldier. I do not carry weapons, and I have no training in handling creatures capable of tearing through steel. I fix broken systems for a living, and the only reason I was near that bay at all was because I had nowhere better to be that night. But sitting there, with a small dragon's breath warm against my hand, and 3 armored warriors watching from the doorway like they had witnessed something impossible, I understood a simple truth that no manual had ever taught me. Fear answers to fear. It always has. But patience, offered without any demand attached to it, is the one language that every frightened creature, human or otherwise, somehow always understands.